The town square smelled like rust and rain. Alara Finch knelt on the wet cobblestones, her wrists bound behind her back with coarse rope that bit into her skin. Around her, a crowd had gathered faces she'd known all her life, now twisted with contempt or carefully blank. Mrs. Halloway from the bakery, Tom from the post office, even the children, wide-eyed and silent, watching from behind their mother's skirts. Above her stood Mayor Crow, his face carved from granite, holding a pair of steel shears that gleamed under the gray afternoon sky. "Alara Finch," he announced, his voice carrying across the square with practiced authority. "You have been found guilty of trespassing on sacred ground. You violated the covenant that keeps this town safe. You broke the oldest law." She wanted to scream that she hadn't known, that the woods beyond Millbrook's borders weren't marked, that no one had ever told her why those trees were forbidden. She'd only been chasing her dog, for God's sake. Copper had run off, and she'd followed without thinking, pushing past the tree line everyone avoided but no one explained. What she'd seen there, no. She pushed the memory down. The shadows that moved wrong, the eyes that glowed silver in the dark, the feeling of being hunted. "The punishment," Mayor Crow continued, stepping behind her, "is public humiliation, so that all may remember the price of defiance." The first cut of the shears made a terrible sound, a metallic whisper followed by the soft slide of hair falling away. Alara's dark curls, the one thing she'd always loved about herself, tumbled to the wet stones. She bit down on her lip until she tasted copper, refusing to cry, refusing to give them the satisfaction. The crowd murmured. Some looked away, others leaned in closer. She focused on breathing, on counting the seconds, on surviving the next moment and the next. Another cut, another fall of hair. Then she felt it, a prickling at the base of her skull, the sensation of being watched not by the crowd, but by something other, something that made her skin tighten and her pulse stutter. She lifted her head slightly, scanning the faces around her, and found him. He stood at the back of the crowd, half hidden in the shadow of the old courthouse. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his collar, and a face that looked carved from storm clouds. He wore black leather jacket, dark jeans, boots that had seen rough roads. Everything about him screamed outsider. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Silver, not gray, not blue silver, like molten moonlight. And they were locked on her with an intensity that felt physical, like hands pressing against her skin. The shears cut again. More hair fell. The stranger's jaw tightened. His hands, she noticed, were clenched into fists at his sides. Mayor Crow spoke again, droning on about tradition and protection and the old ways, but Alara couldn't hear him anymore. All she could feel was that silver gaze burning into her, and beneath it, something else, a pull, low in her belly, that made no sense. Fear and attraction tangled together until she couldn't tell them apart. Who was he? Why was he looking at her like he wanted to either save her or destroy her? The shearing continued. Her scalp felt cold where the wind touched newly bare skin. Someone in the crowd whispered. A child laughed, quickly shushed. The stranger took a step forward. The movement was slight, but something about it made the air change. Several people in the crowd turned, following Alara's gaze. When they saw him, they went still. Unnaturally still. Mayor Crow's voice faltered mid-sentence. "Continue," the stranger said. His voice was rough, like gravel and smoke. "Don't stop on my account." But there was a command in those words that made it clear he expected the opposite. Crow's hands trembled. The shears hung frozen in midair. "This is town business. Official punishment for, I know what it is." The stranger moved through the crowd now, and people parted for him like water around a stone. No one met his eyes. Some actually turned away, shoulders hunched. "I'm asking if you've considered the consequences." "Consequences?" Crow's face had gone pale. "Sir, with respect, this girl broke our oldest law. She went beyond the border. She's human." The stranger stopped a few feet from Alara, and the proximity made her dizzy. He smelled like pine and smoke and something wild she couldn't name. "Unaware of your little arrangements. Ignorant of the treaties you've made in blood and fear." Treaties. The stranger crouched down, bringing himself level with Alara. Up close, his face was harder than she'd thought, all sharp angles and barely contained fury. A scar cut through his left eyebrow. His silver eyes swept over her shorn head, and something dark flickered in their depths. "Did you know?" he asked her quietly. "About the border? About what lives in those woods?" Her throat was too tight to speak. She shook her head. He studied her for a long moment, then rose to his full height and turned to face the crowd. "Then this punishment is void." "You can't," Mayor Crow sputtered. "You have no authority here." The stranger's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Don't I?" The temperature dropped. Ilara could swear she saw frost forming on the cobblestones, spreading outward from where the stranger stood. The crowd shifted uneasily. Someone whispered a name she didn't catch. "Untie her," the stranger said. It wasn't a suggestion. No one moved. Then the stranger's eyes actually flashed, bright and terrible as lightning, and Mayor Crow dropped the shears with a clatter and fumbled at the ropes binding Ilara's wrists. The moment she was free, the stranger turned and walked away. "Follow me," he said, without looking back. "Unless you'd prefer to stay." Ilara looked at the crowd, at their fearful faces and accusing eyes, at the hair scattered on, the wet stones like feathers from a broken wing. She stood on shaking legs and followed the stranger into the growing dark. Behind her, someone whispered, "God help her. The Alpha King has chosen." Ilara's legs trembled as she followed the stranger through Millbrook's twisted streets. Her scalp burned where the shears had cut too close, and the evening air felt sharp against her newly exposed skin. She wanted to reach up and touch what remained of her hair, but pride kept her hands at her sides. The stranger moved with unsettling grace, his stride purposeful yet fluid, like water finding its path downhill. He didn't look back to check if she was following. Somehow, he just knew. They walked in silence past the old Methodist church, past the shuttered general store, toward the edge of town where the streetlights gave way to darkness. Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. What was she doing? She didn't know this man, didn't know his name or why the entire town had reacted to him like he was something out of their nightmares. The Alpha King has chosen. What did that even mean? Where are we going? Her voice came out rougher than she intended. Away from people who would punish ignorance with cruelty. He still didn't turn around. "Unless you'd rather return to your welcoming community." The bitterness in his tone surprised her. She quickened her pace until she walked beside him rather than behind. Now she could see his profile, the hard line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings as if cataloging threats. "I didn't ask you to intervene," she said. That made him pause. He turned to face her fully, and the streetlight caught his features in harsh relief. Up close, he looked older than she'd first thought. Not ancient, but weathered, like someone who'd lived several lifetimes in one span of years. "No," he agreed. "You didn't, but I don't recall asking your permission." "So what? You just swoop in and play. Hero whenever you feel like it." His laugh was short and humorless. "Hero, that's rich." He studied her face with those unnerving silver eyes, and she fought the urge to look away. "Tell me something, Ilara Finch. When you crossed that border, what did you see?" The question landed like a physical blow. The memory she'd been suppressing crashed over her. The darkness between the trees that seemed alive, the shapes that moved on 4 legs and then on 2, the howl that sounded almost like words. "How do you know my name?" she whispered. "Everyone in that square said it, multiple times." "Were you not listening?" "That's not what I mean." She wrapped her arms around herself. "You know what I mean." He was quiet for a moment, his gaze dropping to the ground between them. When he looked up again, something had shifted in his expression. The hardness had cracked, just slightly, revealing something raw underneath. "You saw them," he said. It wasn't a question. The pack, the word, sent, ice down her spine. "I saw shadows," she managed, "and eyes. Silver eyes like..." She stopped, realization dawning cold and terrible. "Like yours." He didn't deny it. Instead, he took a step closer, and Ilara's body responded in ways that made no sense. Her pulse quickened. Her skin felt too tight. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet remained rooted to the cracked pavement. "My name is Kieran," he said quietly, "and you're in more danger than you understand." "From you?" "From everyone." His voice dropped lower. "The moment you stepped beyond that border, you became part of something ancient, something that doesn't care about human ignorance or good intentions. I don't understand." "I know." There was something almost like regret in his tone. "That's what makes this so goddamn complicated." A sound echoed from somewhere behind them, a long, low howl that made every hair on Ilara's body stand on end. Kieran's head snapped toward it, his entire posture shifting. The civilized veneer he'd been maintaining fell away, and what remained looked feral. "We need to move. Now." He grabbed her wrist, his grip firm but not painful, and pulled her into motion. They ran together through the dark streets, past houses with drawn curtains, past the old cemetery with its iron gates, toward the tree line that marked Millbrook's border. Wait, Alara gasped, trying to slow down. You're taking me back there? To the woods? Safest place for you right now. That's insane. So is public humiliation for accidentally wandering off trail, but here we are. He shot her a look over his shoulder. Do you trust your neighbors, Alara? The ones who watched you kneel and bleed and said nothing? She didn't answer because she couldn't. The truth hurt too much. They plunged into the forest, darkness swallowing them whole. Kieran moved through the trees like he could see perfectly, guiding her around roots and rocks she couldn't distinguish from shadow. Behind them, more howls, rose closer now, converging. What do they want? Alara panted. To know why you're with me. His hand tightened around her wrist. To understand why I've broken protocol by interfering. And why did you? He pulled her behind a massive oak, pressing them both against the trunk. His body radiated heat, and standing this close, she could feel the rapid beat of his heart. Or maybe that was her own. Because, he said, his breath warm against her temple, the moment I saw you kneeling in that square, I felt something I haven't felt in 200 years. 200. That's impossible, she whispered. Yes, he agreed. It should be. The howls cut off abruptly. The forest went silent, the kind of silence that meant predators had arrived. Kieran's arm came around her waist, protective and possessive in equal measure. Don't move, he breathed against her ear. Don't speak. And whatever you do, don't look them in the eyes. Through the darkness, Alara saw them emerge. Wolves, dozens of them, forming a circle around the oak tree. Their eyes glowed silver in the moonlight, and as she watched in frozen horror, they began to change. The transformation happened in reverse of what Alara expected. She'd imagined violence, bones cracking, flesh tearing, screams of agony. Instead, the wolves simply unfolded into human shapes, their forms flowing like smoke reshaping itself. One moment, sleek predators surrounded them. The next, men and women stood in a circle, barefoot and dressed in clothes that seemed woven from shadow and moonlight. Kieran's arm remained locked around her waist, his body, a wall between her and the others. She could feel the tension radiating from him, coiled and dangerous. Interesting choice, Your Majesty. The voice came from directly ahead, a woman with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that held the weight of centuries. She wore a long coat that moved like liquid in the darkness. Bringing her here, to us. Your Majesty, Alara's mind reeled. The whisper in the square made sense now. Alpha King. I don't recall requesting your opinion, Morgana. Kieran's voice had gone cold, regal, nothing like the rough warmth he'd used with her moments before. No, you rarely do. Morgana stepped closer, her gaze sliding past Kieran to assess Alara with calculating precision. Yet here we are. The human girl who crossed the veil. The one who saw what she shouldn't have seen. Survived what should have killed her. I was just looking for my dog, Alara said, surprised by her own voice. Kieran's grip tightened in warning, but she continued. I didn't know there were rules. Nobody tells humans anything in this town, they just expect us to obey blind. A ripple of reaction moved through the circle. Some shifters exchanged glances. Others smiled, though not kindly. She has a tongue, said a man to Morgana's right. He was younger, with copper hair and scars across his bare chest. How refreshing. The last human who wandered through, begged for mercy until we grew bored. Enough, Rafe. Kieran's words cracked like a whip. This council was not called to discuss past transgressions. No, Morgana agreed. It was called because you interfered with Millbrook's covenant. The humans punish their own who break the boundary law. That agreement has kept the peace for 3 generations. By stopping their ritual, you've undermined the very treaty you swore to uphold. Alara felt Kieran's heart pound harder against her back. She realized, suddenly, that he'd risked something by saving her. Something significant. The girl was ignorant of the law, Kieran said. Punishing ignorance violates the spirit of the treaty, even if the letter remains intact. Semantics. Morgana tilted her head, bird-like. You know the council won't see it that way. They'll say you've shown favoritism, weakness. Let them say what they want. Will you? Morgana's smile was sharp. Or will you finally admit what we all can smell on you? The air changed. Every shifter in the circle went still, their attention laser-focused on Kieran. Alara felt him stiffen, felt something shift in the way he held her, less protective, more possessive. Careful, old friend, he said softly. You're treading on dangerous ground. Am I? Morgana's eyes glittered. Then explain to this council why the Alpha King, who has rejected every potential mate for 2 centuries, suddenly risks political catastrophe for a random human girl. Explain why your scent has been wrapped around hers since the moment you touched her in that square. Mate. The word hung in the air like smoke. Alara's pulse thundered in her ears. What is she talking about? Nothing, Kieran said quickly. Too quickly. Oh, but it's everything, Morgana countered. She addressed Alara directly now. Do you feel it, girl? The pull? Like invisible threads connecting you to him? Like your skin recognizes his touch even though you've never met before? Alara wanted to deny it. Wanted to call it shock, adrenaline, fear. But standing here in Kieran's arms, she couldn't lie to herself. From the moment their eyes had met in the square, something had shifted inside her. Something fundamental and terrifying. That's impossible, she whispered. I'm human. Yes, Morgana said. That's precisely the problem. Rafe laughed, harsh and ugly. The Alpha King, bound to a human. The ancestors must be howling with laughter. Silence. Kieran's voice resonated with power that made the trees shake. Several younger shifters actually stepped back. My personal affairs are not subject to council approval. They are when they affect pack stability, Morgana said calmly. You know the law, Kieran. A mate bond cannot be denied or hidden. It must be acknowledged before the pack and accepted by both parties. If she truly is your fated mate, she's under my protection. That's all you need to know. Protection won't be enough. Another voice spoke from the shadows, an older man with play, silver hair and eyes like pale amber. The veil is thinning. The old magic is waking. The girl crossed at the exact location where the barrier is weakest. That cannot be coincidence. Elder Thomas is right, Morgana said. 3 nights from now is the hunter's moon. The prophecy speaks of... The prophecy is children's nonsense, Kieran interrupted. Is it? Thomas moved closer, his gaze settling on Alara with unsettling intensity. When the outsider crosses the dying veil, when silver calls to mortal blood, the Alpha King will choose between his crown and his heart. The pack will either rise or fall on that choice. Alara's throat went dry. I don't want any part of this. Too late. Morgana's smile was almost pitying. The moment you stepped between worlds, you became part of it. The only question now is whether you survive what comes next. Kieran finally released Alara, turning to face the council fully. When he moved away from her, she felt the loss like cold water. I'll handle this my way, he said. The girl stays with me until the hunter's moon passes. After that, we'll revisit the question of treaties and prophecies. And if the council disagrees? Rafe challenged. Kieran's smile was all teeth. Then they're welcome to try stopping me. The council dispersed like smoke, shifters melting back into wolf form and vanishing between the trees. Morgana lingered longest, her ancient eyes boring into Alara with something that might have been curiosity or calculation. 3 nights, she said to Kieran. That's all the time I can buy you. After the hunter's moon rises, the council will demand answers. I know. Do you? Morgana's voice softened slightly. Because from where I stand, you're walking straight into the same trap that killed your brother. Kieran's entire body went rigid. That's enough. Is it? But Morgana didn't press further. She shifted her gaze to Alara one last time. Learn quickly, human girl. The Alpha King has enemies who would love nothing more than to exploit a weakness. And you, unfortunately, are the biggest weakness he's shown in centuries. Then she too was gone, dissolving into shadow and fur. Alara's legs finally gave out. She sank against the oak tree, her breath coming in short gasps. Everything that had happened in the last hour crashed over her at once. The humiliation, the terror, the impossible transformations, the talk of mates and prophecies and dying veils. I need you to breathe, Kieran said, crouching in front of her. His hand reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her shoulder. Slower, like this, he demonstrated, and despite everything, Alara found herself matching his rhythm. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The panic receded by degrees. Better? He asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice yet. Good, because we have a bit of a walk ahead of us. Walk where? She looked around at the dark forest. I can barely see 3 feet in front of me. I can see perfectly. You'll have to trust me. Trust. The word felt absurd. She'd known this man, this creature, for less than 2 hours. He'd saved her, yes, but he'd also dragged her into a nightmare she didn't understand. What did Morgana mean? Alara asked. About your brother? Kieran's expression closed off immediately. Nothing that concerns you. Everything about you seems to concern me now. Apparently I'm your... She couldn't even say the word. Whatever it is they think I am. He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. Get up. We're losing time. I'm not moving until you explain. Rafe will be back. Kieran's voice went flat. He doesn't respect council authority, and he's wanted to challenge me for years. Right now, you're the perfect excuse. So unless you want to watch wolves tear each other apart over territory and pride, I suggest you start walking. The threat was effective. Alara pushed herself upright, ignoring the way her muscles protested. Kieran was already moving, expecting her to follow. They walked in tense silence through terrain that grew steadily steeper. Alara stumbled over roots and rocks she couldn't see, catching herself on trees that appeared from nowhere. Kieran never looked back, but somehow his pace adjusted to hers, slowing when she struggled, pausing when she needed to catch her breath. After what felt like hours, the trees thinned, revealing a clearing bathed in moonlight. At its center stood a cabin, old but well-maintained, built from dark wood and stone. Smoke curled from a chimney, and warm light glowed through the windows. "This is your place?" Alara asked. "One of them." Kieran climbed the porch steps and held the door open. "Come inside." The interior surprised her. She'd expected something primitive, but the cabin was comfortable, almost elegant in its simplicity. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, fire crackling in the hearth. Handmade furniture filled the space, a worn leather couch, bookshelves crammed with volumes, a kitchen area with copper pots hanging from hooks. Everything spoke of someone who'd lived here for a very long time. Kieran moved to the kitchen, pulling down mugs from a cabinet. "Sit. I'll make tea." "Tea?" Alara laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "We're going to drink tea. After everything that just happened. Would you prefer whiskey?" "Honestly, yes." He paused, then nodded and reached for a different cabinet. He poured 2 generous measures into heavy glasses and brought one to her. Their fingers brushed as she took it, and that electric pull zinged through her again, stronger than before. Kieran jerked back as if burned. "So it's true," Alara said quietly. "What Morgana said? You feel it too. Doesn't matter what I feel." He downed his whiskey in one swallow. "The mate bond is a biological imperative. Pheromones and instinct. Nothing more. You're lying." His eyes snapped to hers, silver blazing. "Excuse me? You heard me." She set her untouched glass on the coffee table and stood, surprised by her own boldness. "If it was just biology, you wouldn't have risked your position for me. You wouldn't have faced down that council. You would have let them shave my head and walked away. Maybe I should have. But you didn't." She took a step closer, watching him tense. "Why? I told you. The punishment was unjust." "Bullshit. You don't strike me as someone who gets involved in human affairs out of principle. There's something else. Something you're not telling me." For a long moment, Kieran just stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a genuine sound, rough but real. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Fear, submission, maybe hysteria." He tilted his head, studying her with renewed interest. "Instead, you stand here, in a cabin miles from civilization, interrogating someone who could kill you without breaking a sweat." "Could you?" Alara asked. "Kill me?" "No." The answer came immediately, stripped of pretense. "That's the problem." The admission hung between them, vulnerable and dangerous. Alara's heart kicked against her ribs. She should be terrified, should be running. Instead, she felt drawn to him like gravity, like some force older than reason. "Your brother," she said softly. "What happened to him?" Kieran's face went blank. He fell in love with a human. It destroyed him. "How?" "That," Kieran said, "is a story for another night. Right now, you need sleep. There's a bedroom upstairs, it's yours. I'll take the couch. Kieran, please." The single word carried exhaustion that went bone deep. "Just sleep. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." Alara didn't expect to sleep, but exhaustion pulled her under the moment her head hit the pillow. The dreams came immediately. She stood in a forest clearing she'd never seen before, moonlight painting everything silver. A wolf watched her from across the space, massive, with fur black as midnight and eyes that burned like molten metal. Not threatening, waiting. She took a step forward. The wolf's ears pricked. Another step. The distance between them collapsed in ways that defied physics, and suddenly she was close enough to touch the creature. Her hand reached out, fingers sinking into thick fur. Warm, real. The wolf's heartbeat thrummed against her palm, matching the rhythm of her own. "You see me," a voice said, not spoken aloud but echoing inside her skull. "Even in dreams, you see what I am." "Kieran?" she whispered. The wolf's form shimmered, and then he stood before her, human but not quite. His eyes still glowed with inner light. His skin seemed to shift between flesh and shadow. This is what I am, he said. Monster and man, king and killer. The line blurs until I forget which side I'm supposed to be on. You're not a monster. You don't know what I've done. Then tell me. But the dream fractured, dissolving into darkness, and the sound of howling that felt like grief. Alara woke with a gasp. Gray dawn light filtered through unfamiliar windows. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The shearing, the forest, the council of wolves, Kieran's cabin in the mountains. She touched her head, fingers finding the uneven patches where her hair had been cut. The humiliation felt distant now, overshadowed by stranger concerns. Downstairs, she heard movement. The smell of coffee drifted up, rich and dark. Alara found clothes folded on a chair by the door, simple but clean. A flannel shirt too large for her. Soft jeans that fit surprisingly well. She dressed quickly and descended the narrow stairs. Kieran stood by the stove, his back to her, cooking eggs in a cast-iron skillet. He'd changed into a black thermal shirt that clung to the muscles of his shoulders. His dark hair was damp, as if he'd recently showered. Something about the domestic scene felt surreal after last night's violence and magic. You cook, she said. He glanced over his shoulder. I've had 200 years to learn. It would be pathetic if I couldn't manage eggs. About that. Alara slid onto a stool at the kitchen counter. 200 years. You're serious? Give or take a decade. He plated the eggs, adding toast and bacon, then set the food in front of her. Eat. You need your strength. For what? For everything that comes next. He poured coffee into a chipped mug and handed it to her. Cream or sugar? Black is fine. She wrapped her hands around the mug's warmth. I dreamed about you. Kieran's hand stilled on the coffee pot. What kind of dream? You were a wolf. But also not. You spoke to me without words. She watched his face carefully. Is that normal? For whatever this is between us? He set the pot down with deliberate care. The mate bond creates connections, especially during sleep, when mental barriers are down. What you experienced was a shallow link. It will get stronger if... He stopped himself. If what? If the bond is consummated, accepted by both parties. His voice went rough. Which won't happen. Why not? Because you're human. He finally looked at her, and the pain in his silver eyes made her chest ache. Because every human who's ever bonded with one of us has died badly. Because I won't be responsible for another. He cut himself off, jaw clenching. Another what? Another death? Alara set down her mug. Your brother. That's what Morgana meant. His human mate died. She didn't just die. Kieran's hands gripped the counter edge hard enough that the wood creaked. She was murdered. By wolves who thought the bond was an abomination. They made it look like an accident, a fall from the cliffs during a storm. But I knew. I smelled their lies. What did you do? What I had to. His voice went cold. I executed every wolf involved. Drew their confessions in blood and fire. Made examples of them so no one would ever dare. He stopped, breathing hard. And then I watched my brother die. Anyway. From grief. From a broken bond. He lasted 3 days after she was gone. Just stopped fighting. Stopped living. Alara's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. It wasn't your fault. Kieran turned away, staring out the window at the forest beyond. But it's why this whatever is happening between us can't continue. I won't watch another person I care about die because of what I am. So what's your plan? Keep me locked in this cabin until the prophecy deadline passes and then send me back to Millbrook? Something like that. And if I don't want to go? He laughed bitterly. You will. Once you understand the reality of this world, you'll run as far and fast as you can. They always do. They? The humans who learn the truth, who see what we really are beneath the skin. He finally faced her again. We're predators, Alara. No matter how civilized we pretend to be, no matter how well we control it, there's always something wild underneath. Something that hungers. She should feel afraid. His words were meant to scare her. Instead, she felt anger rising. Stop it, she said. Stop what? Trying to push me away. Making yourself into a monster to protect me from getting close. She stood, moving around the counter to face him directly. I'm not your brother's mate. I'm not some fragile thing that will shatter at the first sign of danger. Yesterday I was publicly humiliated, chased through a forest by actual werewolves, and told I'm somehow fated to an Alpha King. I'm still here, still standing. Kieran stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes. You're either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. She held his gaze. But I deserve the truth. All of it. What is this prophecy everyone keeps mentioning? What happens during the Hunter's Moon? And why does my crossing that border matter so much? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he sighed, the sound carrying centuries of weariness. All right, he said quietly. But you're not going to like it. Kieran led her to the bookshelves that lined the western wall of the cabin. He ran his fingers along the spines, ancient leather and cracked binding, until he found what he sought, a volume so old it looked like it might crumble at a touch. This has been in my family for 9 generations, he said, setting it carefully on the wooden table. Written in the old tongue by the first Alpha King's seer. Most wolves think it's mythology, pretty stories to tell cubs on winter nights. But you don't think that. I didn't, until recently. He opened the book, pages crackling with age. The text was handwritten in flowing script, illuminated with intricate drawings of wolves and moons and symbols Elara didn't recognize. 3 months ago, the veil started thinning. The barrier between our world and yours, it's not physical, it's magical. Bloodbound. Maintained by the treaty your town elders signed generations ago. The boundary law, Elara murmured. Yes. Humans stay on their side, we stay on ours. The punishment rituals, as barbaric as they are, they feed the magic. Pain and humiliation strengthen the barrier. It's old magic. Dark magic, but effective. Elara's stomach turned. So when they shaved my head, they were performing a ritual that's kept both species safe for over a century. Kieran's finger traced the text. But the veil is dying anyway. The magic is weakening. And according to this prophecy, when it falls completely, the consequences will be catastrophic. He turned the book so she could see the page. The illustration showed a woman standing at a crossroads. Wolves on one side, humans on the other. Above her, a blood-red moon. When the veil breathes its final breath, Kieran read, his voice taking on a rhythmic quality. When silver meets mortal flesh at the dying gate, the outsider shall walk between worlds. She who knows neither fang nor fear shall choose the fate of both kingdoms. The Alpha King will stand at the crossroads, crown or heart, power or peace. His choice will either bind the worlds in blood or tear them asunder forever. Silence filled the cabin. Elara stared at the illustration, at the woman who looked nothing like her, but somehow felt familiar. You think I'm this outsider, she said finally. I know you are. Kieran closed the book gently. You crossed at the exact point where the veil is thinnest. On the exact night the prophecy predicted 3 days before the Hunter's Moon, and the moment I saw you, he stopped, jaw working. The bond snapped into place like recognition, like my soul had been waiting for you. The raw honesty in his voice made Elara's breath catch. What does the prophecy mean? Crown or heart? That's the question, isn't it? He moved to the window, putting distance between them again. I think it means I have to choose between remaining Alpha King, maintaining the old ways, the separation between species, or accepting the mate bond with you, which would fundamentally change everything. How? An alpha's mate shares his power, becomes part of the pack hierarchy, if a human held that position. He shook his head. Some wolves would accept it. Many wouldn't. It would fracture the pack, maybe start a civil war. So you reject the bond, and what? I go back to my normal life? If only it were that simple. His reflection in the glass looked haunted. Rejecting a true mate bond is devastating for both parties. And there's another part of the prophecy, a darker interpretation. Tell me, some believe the outsider isn't meant to choose at all, that she's meant to be sacrificed, that her blood on the night of the Hunter's Moon will strengthen the veil permanently. He turned to face her, and his eyes blazed with barely controlled fury. There are wolves on the council who would support that interpretation. Ice flooded Elara's veins. Morgana? No. Morgana is old enough to remember what happened last time we tried to solve problems with human blood. It didn't end well. His expression softened slightly. But Rafe and his followers? They see you as a threat and an opportunity, a chance to remove a weak Alpha King and restore purity to the pack. You're not weak. I'm compromised. The bond makes me vulnerable. They can smell it on me, the need to protect you, the distraction. In wolf politics, that's the same as weakness. He crossed to her, close enough that she could feel his heat. That's why we only have 3 days. By the Hunter's Moon, the council will demand I make a choice. Accept you publicly as my mate, or hand you over for the sacrifice. And if you refuse both options, then I lose the crown anyway, and you lose my protection. Rafe would challenge me, win by default, and do whatever he wants with you. Alara's mind raced. There has to be another way. Another interpretation of the prophecy. I've been searching for one for 3 months. Kieran's hand lifted, almost touching her face, then dropped. Every text, every ancient scroll, every elder who might remember the old ways, they all say the same thing. The outsider's choice determines the fate of both worlds. What choice? You keep saying that, but no one's explained what I'm supposed to choose. Because no one knows. Frustration leaked into his voice. The prophecy is deliberately vague. It could mean choosing between humans and wolves. Between life and death. Between... He stopped abruptly. Between what? Between accepting the bond or walking away from it. His silver eyes locked onto hers. Between me and your freedom. The weight of that settled over Alara like a physical thing. 3 days. She had 3 days to decide if she was willing to bind herself to a man, a creature she barely knew. To potentially start a war. To become something she didn't understand. Or to die. I need air, she said. Kieran stepped back immediately. The forest is safe during daylight. Just don't cross the stone markers. Around the clearing. They're warded, they'll keep you protected within the boundary. Alara nodded and fled outside, her heart hammering. Behind her, she heard Kieran's voice, soft and broken. I'm sorry, for all of this. But when she turned, he was already gone. The clearing around Kieran's cabin was larger than Alara had realized in the darkness. Ancient pines formed a protective circle, their branches filtering sunlight into dappled patterns on the moss-covered ground. Stone markers, carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly, ringed the perimeter at regular intervals. She walked the boundary, her mind churning. 3 days to decide her entire future. 3 days to choose between death, slavery to fate, or starting a supernatural war. The absurdity of it made her want to laugh or scream or both. Her hand unconsciously went to her head, fingers tracing the rough patches where her hair had been shorn. Yesterday morning, her biggest concern had been whether Mrs. Chen would restock the good coffee at the market. Now she was apparently the key to some ancient prophecy, fated to a 200-year-old werewolf king who looked at her like she was both his salvation and his doom. You're thinking too loud, a voice said from above. Alara jumped, looking up to find Kieran perched in a massive oak tree, one leg dangling casually over a branch. He looked different up there, younger somehow, less burdened. How long have you been watching me? She asked. Since you came outside. Old habit. I don't like letting you out of my sight. He dropped from the branch, landing with impossible grace. You're angry. I'm overwhelmed. That's fair. He kept his distance, respecting the space she'd claimed. For what it's worth, if I could change this, if I could take away the bond and let you go back to your normal life, I would. Would you? Alara turned to face him fully. Because from where I stand, you're the only person who's been honest with me. My whole life in Millbrook was built on lies and secrets. At least you're telling me the truth, even if it's terrifying. Kieran's expression shifted. Your town elders knew about the treaty, the consequences. They chose to keep their people ignorant. Why? Because informed humans ask questions, they resist, they try to find loopholes or escape. He moved closer, his boots silent on the moss. Ignorant humans simply obey out of superstition and fear. It's easier to control them. The bitterness in his voice surprised her. You hate that, the control. I hate a lot of things about the old ways, but I'm bound by them just as surely as you were bound by Millbrook's silence. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his silver eyes. Being king doesn't mean freedom, Alara. It means being chained by tradition and expectation. Every decision I make affects thousands of lives. Is that why you've been alone for 200 years? No mate, no real connection? His jaw tightened. I've had lovers, companions, but no one you let close. No. The admission came quietly. After what happened to my brother, I couldn't risk it. Every relationship became a potential weapon someone could use against me, so I stopped trying. Alara took a step toward him, drawn by the raw vulnerability in his voice. That sounds lonely. It is. His eyes tracked her movement like a wolf watching prey, not threatening but intensely focused. But it's safer, for everyone involved, except now you don't have a choice. No, the mate bond doesn't care about safety or wisdom. It just is. His hand lifted, hovering near her face. Do you feel it? Even now there's this pull, like gravity, like I could walk away from you right now, and every cell in my body would be screaming to come back. She did feel it. That invisible tether between them, growing stronger by the hour. When he disappeared inside the cabin, part of her had ached at the distance. Standing close, now, her skin felt electric, hyper-aware of every breath he took. "I barely know you," she whispered. "I know. That's what makes this so impossible." His fingers finally made contact, brushing against her cheek with devastating gentleness. In another world, another life, we could have had time, dates and conversations and the slow build of real connection. But the prophecy doesn't care about courtship or choice. So we're just supposed to accept it? Let fate decide? I don't know. His thumb traced her jawline, and Alara's breath hitched. All I know is that when I saw you kneeling in that square, something in me broke open, something I'd locked away for lifetimes. And the thought of you being hurt, being sacrificed to preserve some ancient treaty, his voice roughened. I would burn the world before I let that happen. The intensity of his words should have frightened her. Instead, they ignited something deep in her chest. This connection between them wasn't just supernatural, compulsion. There was something genuine underneath a recognition that went beyond magic or prophecy. "Kieran," she started. But he stepped back abruptly, his entire posture shifting. "Someone's coming," he said, his voice dropping to a growl. "Multiple someones. Fast." Alara heard it, then the sound of running footsteps, branches breaking, distant shouts. Kieran moved to put himself between her and the forest edge, his body coiling with tension. 3 wolves burst from the tree line, shifting mid-run into human forms. Rafe led them, his copper hair wild, his face twisted with barely contained rage. 2 others flanked him, a woman with scars across her arms, and a young man whose eyes glowed with feral hunger. "Your Majesty," Rafe said, the title dripping with mockery. "We need to talk." "Not interested." Kieran's voice carried absolute authority. "Leave. Now." "Can't do that." Rafe's smile was all teeth. "The council has called an emergency session. Seems some interesting. Information has come to light about your little human." Alara's heart kicked. "What information?" Rafe's attention swung to her, predatory and cold. "Tell me, girl. Did you really think no one would notice? That we wouldn't smell it on you?" "Smell what?" Kieran demanded. "Her bloodline." Rafe laughed, sharp and cruel. "Your precious mate isn't fully human after all. She carries wolf ancestry, diluted, dormant, but definitely there. Which means the prophecy takes on a whole new meaning." The clearing went silent. Alara felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. "That's impossible," she breathed. "Is it?" Rafe's eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. "Ask your mother." "Oh wait, you can't, because she's been dead since you were 5. "Convenient." "That. No one to tell you what you really are." Kieran's growl was inhuman. "Get out." "Gladly, but the girl comes with us." "Council's orders." Rafe gestured, and his companions moved forward. Kieran's eyes flashed pure silver. "Over my dead body." "That," Rafe said, "can be arranged." The transformation happened so fast Alara barely tracked it. One moment Kieran stood before her in human form. The next, a massive black wolf erupted from where he'd been standing, clothes shredding as his body reshaped itself. He was easily twice the size of Rafe's companions, a creature of pure muscle and lethal grace, with eyes that burned like silver fire. Rafe shifted too, becoming a rust-colored wolf with scars along his muzzle. The other 2 followed, forming a triangle of threat. Alara pressed her back against the oak tree, heart hammering. The wolf that was Kieran positioned himself directly between her and the others, hackles raised, teeth bared in a snarl that made the air vibrate. "Stay behind me." His voice echoed in her head, shocking her. "Don't move. Don't run." She wanted to ask how he was speaking to her, but the wolves were already moving. Rafe lunged first, going for Kieran's throat. They collided mid-air in a tangle of fur and fangs, hitting the ground with bone-jarring impact. The scarred woman circled left, trying to flank. The young male went right. Kieran fought like controlled violence, powerful strikes, precise movements, using his superior size to throw Rafe back. But 3 against 1, even for an alpha king, created impossible odds. The woman darted in, teeth snapping at Kieran's hindquarters. He twisted, catching her by the scruff and hurling her into a tree with sickening force. She yelped but recovered quickly, limping but still dangerous. "Run," Kieran's voice commanded in her mind, strained with effort. "Back to the cabin. Lock yourself inside." But Alara couldn't move, couldn't look away, because as she watched Kieran fight, something inside her stirred. Something that recognized the violence as more than just brutality, as protection, as sacrifice, as a king defending what was his. Heat bloomed in her chest, spreading outward through her limbs. Her skin felt too tight. Her vision sharpened, colors becoming more vivid. She could smell blood and earth, and the distinctive musk of wolf. The young male broke away from the fight, racing toward her. Alara's body reacted before her mind caught up. She dropped into a crouch, and when the wolf leaped, she rolled aside with fluid grace she'd never possessed before. Her hand found a fallen branch thick as her forearm, and she swung it with strength that shouldn't have been possible. The impact connected with the wolf's skull. He crumpled, stunned. Kieran's roar of fury shook the clearing. He caught Rafe by the throat, pinning the rust-colored wolf to the ground with enough force to crack stone. The scarred woman hesitated, caught between attacking and retreating. Submit. Kieran's mental voice boomed, carrying power that made Alara's knees weak. Or die. Rafe struggled, but Kieran's jaws tightened. Blood welled, matting rust fur. Finally, Rafe went limp, not dead, but yielding, the wolf equivalent of surrender. Kieran released him slowly, backing toward Alara without taking his eyes off the defeated challengers. The scarred woman dragged her companion away. Rafe shifted back to human form, naked and bleeding, his expression murderous. "This isn't over," he spat, blood running from the wounds on his neck. "The council will hear about this. Let them." Kieran shifted back, his transformation smoother, more controlled than the others. He stood there breathing hard, covered in cuts and bite marks, his skin already beginning to heal. "Tell them I defended what's mine. Tell them the Alpha King doesn't negotiate with those who threaten his mate." "Your mate." Rafe laughed bitterly. "You're so blinded by the bond you can't see the truth. She's not fully human, Kieran. That changes everything about the prophecy. The sacrifice isn't meant to strengthen the veil, it's meant to break it completely. And you're helping it happen." He shifted again and ran, his companions following. Silence fell over the one, clearing. Alara stood there trembling, the branch still clutched in her hands, trying to process what had just happened, what she'd just done. The speed, the strength, the way her body had moved like it knew things her mind didn't. "Alara." Kieran's voice was gentle now. All the violence drained away. "Look at me." She turned, meeting his silver eyes. They were filled with something that looked like grief. "He's right, isn't he?" she whispered. I'm not human." "You're human enough." He moved closer, reaching for her, then stopping himself. "But there's wolf blood in your ancestry, probably several generations back. Dormant until the bond activated it." Her legs gave out. Kieran caught her, lowering them both to the ground, cradling her against his chest. "My mother," Rafe said. "What did he mean?" "I don't know yet." His arms tightened around her. "But we'll find out. I promise." Alara pressed her face against his shoulder, breathing in his scent pine and smoke and something wild that called to newly awakened parts of her. "This is why you could speak to me. Why I could hear you during the fight. The mate bond allows mental communication, but it's stronger when both parties have wolf blood." His hand stroked her back in soothing circles. "I should have sensed it sooner. Should have known." "How could you?" "I didn't know." She pulled back to look at him. "Kieran, what does this mean for the prophecy? If I'm not fully human, if the sacrifice would break the veil instead of strengthening it, it means we've been interpreting it wrong from the beginning." His expression was grim. "The veil isn't meant to be preserved. It's meant to fall. And your choice, the outsider's choice, isn't about saving both worlds. It's about whether they merge or destroy each other." The weight of that revelation pressed down on Alara like physical force. "I don't understand. How would they merge? Through you? Through us?" Kieran's thumb traced her. "Cheekbone. A human with wolf blood, bonded to the Alpha King. You'd be the bridge, the living connection between both species. And if I refuse? If I reject the bond?" His eyes darkened. "Then the veil falls anyway, but without a bridge to hold it together. The worlds collide violently, humans and wolves at war until one species destroys the other. So my choices are, accept a bond I never asked for, and become some kind of supernatural liaison, or condemn both species to genocide." Her laugh was brittle. "That's not a choice. That's a trap. I know." He rested his forehead against hers. "And I'm sorry. So damn sorry." They sat there in the blood-stained clearing, holding each other as the sun climbed higher. Tomorrow was the hunter's moon. Tomorrow, everything would change. But for this moment, they had each other. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like enough. They returned to the cabin in heavy silence, Kieran's wounds already fading to pink scars. Alara's hand still trembled, from the adrenaline, from the impossible strength that had flooded her body during the fight. Inside, Kieran disappeared upstairs and returned wearing clean clothes, carrying a soft sweater for her. "You're shaking," he said quietly. She hadn't realized. The sweater smelled like him, pine and smoke and safety. She pulled it on, drowning in the oversized fabric. "I need to know about my mother," Alara said. "Everything." Kieran moved to the bookshelf, pulling down a different volume newer than the prophecy book, bound in dark leather. "Pack records. Every wolf bloodline for the past 3 centuries is documented here. If your mother had wolf ancestry, there should be evidence." Her name was Sarah. Sarah Chen before she married my father. Alara wrapped her arms around herself. "She died in a car accident when I was 5. At least, that's what I was told." Something flickered across Kieran's face. "Chen. That's not a common name in shifter lines." He flipped through pages, finger, tracing genealogies written in cramped handwriting. Then he stopped. "Here." Alara moved to his side, looking at the entry he'd found. The name leaped out at her. Sarah Chen B. 1989. Daughter of Margaret Chen, human, and David Thornwood, wolf, Ember Clan. Thornwood. Kieran breathed. That's an old bloodline. Powerful. They were wiped out during the purge. What purge? 30 years ago, several packs decided that mixing with humans weakened wolf blood. They went after half-breeds systematically, hunted them down. His jaw clenched. Your grandfather, David Thornwood, he would have been a target. And if your mother carried his blood, the implications crashed over Alara. The car accident wasn't an accident? Probably not. Kieran's voice was gentle. "I'm sorry." Alara sank onto the couch, her mind reeling. Her entire childhood had been built on lies. Her mother murdered for being part wolf. Her father, did he know? Had he spent 20 years keeping this secret, moving them to Millbrook where the treaty kept wolves at bay? "The dormant blood," she said slowly. "Why didn't it activate before? Why now?" The mate bond is a powerful catalyst. When it snapped into place, it would have awakened anything supernatural in your bloodline. Kieran sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. "The strength you showed during the fight, that's just the beginning. As the bond strengthens, so will your abilities." "What abilities?" "Enhanced senses, faster healing, mental communication with pack members. Maybe more, depending on how strong your Thornwood blood runs." He hesitated. "There's also a chance you could shift. Partially, at least. Half-bloods usually can't take full wolf form, but claws, enhanced speed, those are possible." The idea should have terrified her. Instead, Alara felt a strange sense of rightness. Like pieces of herself she'd never understood were finally clicking into place. The restlessness she'd always felt in Millbrook. The way she'd never quite fit in with the other humans. The dreams of running through forests on 4 legs that she'd dismissed as childish fantasy. "I'm not who I thought I was," she whispered. "No." Kieran's hand found hers, fingers interlacing. "You're more, and that terrifies them. Rafe, the council, they're afraid of what you represent." "Which is what?" "Change. Evolution. The end of the old ways." His thumb traced circles on her palm, the touch sending warmth up her arm. "Pure-blood wolves have maintained control for centuries by keeping humans separate and weak. But a half-blood bonded to the Alpha King? That shifts the entire power structure. Suddenly humans aren't prey or servants or obstacles, they're potential equals." Alara looked at their joined hands. "Is that why you defended me? Political strategy?" "No." The word came fierce and immediate. "I defended you because the thought of losing you makes it hard to breathe. Because in 2 days you've become more important to me than 2 centuries of ruling. Because when I look at you, I see..." He stopped, jaw working. "What do you see?" He met her eyes, and the vulnerability there stole her breath. "Home. I see home." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. This connection between them was more than fate or prophecy or supernatural compulsion. It was real. Terrifying and real. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of tomorrow. Of what choosing you means. Of becoming something I don't understand. I'm scared too." Kieran lifted their joined hands, pressing his lips to her knuckles. "I've fought wars and survived centuries, and held a crown through political nightmares. But this you undo me completely. Then why does it feel right? Why does being near you feel like the only thing that makes sense anymore? Because the bond knows what we're too stubborn to admit." He shifted closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. "We're meant for this. For each other. Every instinct I have screams it." Alara leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. If I accept the bond tomorrow, if I stand with you in front of the council and claim you as my mate, what happens to me? To us? We become one, in the eyes of the pack. Your life binds to mine. You'll share my power, my position, my enemies. His forehead pressed against hers. I won't lie, it will be dangerous. There will be wolves who try to kill you to weaken me, but I will spend every day of my immortal life keeping you safe. Immortal? Her eyes opened. The alpha bond extends lifespan. You won't age as humans do. You'll have centuries, not decades. His smile was sad. Another choice I'm forcing on you. Centuries with you. Alara tested the words. Centuries of this, whatever this is between us. If you'll have me, she should need more time. Should demand space to think clearly without his proximity clouding her judgment. But tomorrow the hunter's moon would rise, and she would have to choose. Not just for herself, but for every human and wolf who would live with the consequences. Ask me? She whispered. Ask me properly. Kieran pulled back slightly, his silver eyes searching hers. Then slowly, deliberately, he slid from the couch to kneel before her. Alara Finch, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Will you accept this bond? Will you stand with me tomorrow as my mate, my equal, my heart? Will you help me bridge two worlds and forge something new from the ashes of the old? Alara looked at him, this ancient, powerful creature kneeling vulnerable before her, offering everything, asking for everything. Yes, she breathed. Yes. The night of the hunter's moon arrived with unnatural stillness. Alara woke before dawn, her body thrumming with energy she couldn't contain. Beside her on the couch where they'd fallen asleep talking through the night, Kieran stirred, his arm tightening around her waist. Can't sleep either? He murmured against her hair. Too much. Happening inside me. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart race. Everything feels sharper, like my skin is too tight. The bond is fully awakening. By moonrise tonight, the transformation will be complete. He shifted to look at her, silver eyes luminous in the pre-dawn darkness. How do you feel? Terrified. Exhilarated. Like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, and the only way forward is to jump. I'll catch you, he promised. No matter what happens tonight, I'll catch you. They rose together, moving through morning rituals that felt sacred despite their simplicity. Kieran made coffee while Alara showered, marveling at how her senses had intensified overnight. She could hear his heartbeat from upstairs, could smell the subtle shift in the air that meant rain was coming, could feel the pull of the bond like a golden thread connecting her to him, growing stronger with every passing hour. When she came downstairs, she found Kieran standing by the window, staring at the forest with an expression of deep concentration. They're gathering, he said without turning. I can feel them. Every wolf in the territory, converging on the old ritual grounds. Where is that? Near the lake, about 3 miles north, where the veil is thinnest. He finally looked at her, and his breath caught. You're changing. Alara moved to the mirror hanging by the door. Her reflection showed subtle differences. Her eyes seemed brighter, more reflective. Her features sharper, more defined. The uneven patches where her hair had been cut were already growing back, dark curls sprouting with supernatural speed. Is it supposed to happen this fast? Not usually. But you're bonding with an alpha. The power exchange is accelerating everything. He came to stand behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. In the mirror, they looked right together, matched. Are you ready? No, but I don't think I ever will be. He pressed a kiss to the crown of her head. Then, we go anyway. They dressed for ceremony, Kieran in black that made him look every inch the king he was. Alara in the deep green dress he'd found for her, simple but elegant. She looked at herself one more time, seeing someone both familiar and foreign. The girl from Millbrook was gone. In her place stood someone stronger. Someone caught between worlds. Someone ready to choose. The walk to the ritual grounds passed in tense silence. The forest watched them, every rustle and bird call feeling loaded with meaning. As they drew closer, Alara heard voices, hundreds of them, speaking in low tones that created a constant susurrus like wind through leaves. They emerged into a clearing that took her breath away. The lake stretched before them, its surface mirror still and reflecting the sky above. Around its shore, wolves had gathered, some in human form, others as massive four-legged creatures with eyes that glowed in the fading daylight. There had to be at least 300 of them, forming a massive circle around a raised stone platform that jutted into the water. On the platform stood Morgana, flanked by Elder Thomas and 4 other wolves Alara didn't recognize. The council. Rafe stood to one side, his neck still bandaged from yesterday's fight. his expression murderous. Every eye turned to them as they entered the clearing. The weight of that collective attention was suffocating. Kieran's hand found hers, squeezing once. Then he led her forward through the parted crowd toward the platform. Alpha King Kieran Shadowmere, Morgana's voice rang out, formal and ancient. You stand before the council and your pack on the night of the Hunter's Moon. The prophecy has reached its culmination. The outsider walks among us. The veil trembles. The time has come for choice. They reached the platform. Kieran helped Alara climb the stone steps, then stood beside her, facing the council. I have made my choice, Kieran said, his voice carrying across the water. Alara Finch is my mate. I claim her before this council and this pack. I bind my life to hers, my power to hers, my fate to hers. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some angry, some shocked, some resigned. You understand what you're doing? Elder Thomas asked. This is unprecedented. A half-blood has never been given the chance, Kieran interrupted. Because we've been afraid. Because the old ways demanded purity over progress. But those same old ways are killing us. The veil is dying because the magic that sustains it is rooted in separation and fear. The only way forward is together. Pretty words, Rafe called out. But the prophecy speaks of destruction. Of worlds colliding. You're condemning us all for a woman you've known for 3 days. No. Alara's voice surprised her with its strength. She stepped forward, addressing the crowd directly. He's giving you a choice. Keep hiding behind walls that are crumbling anyway, or build bridges while you still can. I didn't ask for this. Didn't ask to be part of your prophecy or your politics. But I'm here now. And I'm not afraid of what I am anymore. She felt it then, the change rippling through her. Her hands began to shift, nails lengthening into claws. Power surged through her veins, hot and wild and utterly right. I am Sarah Chen's daughter, she continued, her voice taking on an otherworldly resonance. David Thornwood's granddaughter. I carry wolf blood and human memory. I am the bridge the prophecy spoke of. And I choose, above them. The sun dipped below the horizon. The moon rose, massive and blood-red, bathing the clearing in crimson light. The veil shattered, reality fractured like breaking glass. Through the cracks, Alara saw both worlds overlapping the forest and something else. Somewhere wild and primal where the first wolves had been born. Power flooded through her, through the bond, through Kieran, creating a circuit of energy that made the air crackle. I choose unity, she gasped, fighting to stay conscious under the onslaught of magic. I choose both worlds. I choose us. Kieran's hand gripped hers, his own transformation beginning. Together, they became the bridge light pouring from their joined hands, weaving the shattered veil into something new, something stronger. Around them, wolves howled as the magic took hold. The transformation of the veil lasted through the night. Alara stood at the center of the maelstrom, power coursing through her in waves that should have torn her apart. But Kieran's presence anchored her, his strength feeding into hers, creating a balance between human consciousness and wolf instinct. Through their joined hands, she felt everything, the terror and hope of 300 wolves, the pulse of ancient magic rewiring itself, the whisper of her mother's bloodline singing through her veins, the Thornwood legacy, dormant for a generation, roaring back to life. The lake's surface erupted with light, pillars of silver, and gold spiraling upward into the crimson moon. The forest itself seemed to breathe, trees bending and swaying as reality restructured around them. Stay with me, Kieran's voice echoed in her mind, steady despite the chaos. Just a little longer. I'm not going anywhere, she promised. The magic reached its crescendo. Alara screamed as her body completed its transformation, not into full wolf, but something between. Her bones reshaped without breaking, her senses expanding until she could hear heartbeats like thunder, smell emotions like perfume, feel the interconnected web of every living thing in the forest. Then, as suddenly as it began, the storm ended. Silence fell over the clearing. The moon's red tint faded to silver white. The lake settled into glassy stillness. Alara collapsed, but Kieran caught her, lowering them both to the stone platform. She looked down at her hands, human again, but with faint silver lines tracing patterns beneath her skin. Marks of the bond. Marks of what she'd become. It's done, Morgana said, her voice filled with wonder. She stepped forward, studying the space around them. The veil. It hasn't fallen. It's transformed. I can feel both worlds, but they're not colliding, they're harmonizing. Elder Thomas knelt at the platform's edge, pressing his palm to the stone. The old magic is gone. In its place. He looked up at Alara with something like reverence. Something new. something that doesn't demand separation. It allows choice. Murmurs spread through the crowd, wolves shifting between forms as they tested the new reality. The invisible barrier that had kept them confined to their territory gone. But so too was the hostile magic that would have turned the human world into a battlefield. Rafe pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with fury and something else, fear. What have you done? You've destroyed everything our ancestors built. No. Kieran rose, pulling Alara up with him. He faced the crowd, his voice carrying absolute authority. We've fulfilled the prophecy, not by preserving the old ways or destroying them, but by evolving them. The outsider chose unity. The Alpha King chose his heart, and the worlds didn't end, they grew. Humans will know about us now, Rafe spat. They'll hunt us, kill us. Some might try. Alara found her voice, stronger now. But others will understand, will adapt, the same way I did. The same way every half-blood who's been hiding in fear can now stop hiding. She addressed the crowd directly. My mother was murdered for carrying wolf blood. How many others have died because we were too afraid to acknowledge what we share? How many families torn apart by secrets and shame? Silence answered her, but she saw it in their faces: recognition, pain, hope. The old treaty kept us safe, she continued, but it also kept us isolated, kept us afraid. This new world, it won't be easy. There will be humans who fear you and wolves who hate them, but there will also be understanding, growth, the chance to be whole instead of fractured. Morgana smiled, slow and genuine. The Thornwood blood runs true. Your grandfather would be proud. The council recognizes the bond, Elder Thomas announced formally. Alara Finch, born of two worlds, we accept you as mate to the Alpha King, as bridge between species, as the first of a new generation. One by one, wolves in the crowd lowered their heads in acknowledgement. Not all. Rafe and several others turned and stalked away, their rejection clear, but most stayed. Most chose to try. Kieran's arm came around Alara's waist. Can you walk? He asked quietly. I think so. Her legs trembled, exhausted from the magical onslaught, but they held. They descended the platform together, moving through the crowd toward the forest path. Wolves pressed close, some reaching out to touch Alara's hand or arm, tentative gestures of acceptance. She felt their emotions through the new bond, a cacophony of fear and hope, and curiosity. Is it always this overwhelming? She asked Kieran mentally. It gets easier, he promised. You'll learn to filter, to shield. For now, just breathe. They walked back to the cabin as dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Behind them, the pack dispersed, returning to territories that suddenly felt less like cages and more like homes with open doors. Inside the cabin, Alara finally let herself collapse onto the couch. Every muscle ached. Her mind spun with memories of magic and transformation, and 300 wolves bowing to her. Kieran knelt before her, concern etched on his face. How do you feel? Like I've been torn apart and put back together wrong. She managed a weak smile. Or maybe right. I can't tell yet. You were extraordinary. He took her hands, pressing kisses to her knuckles. You stood before the pack and spoke truth they needed to hear. You transformed the veil itself. You saved both worlds. We did. Together. Together, he agreed. Alara looked at their joined hands, at the silver marks beneath her skin that matched the ones on his. What happens now? Now? Kieran's smile was soft, the hardness she'd first seen in him completely gone. Now we figure out how to live in this new world we've created. We deal with the wolves who'll fight the change, and the humans who'll fear it. We build bridges, one connection at a time. And us? He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. We have centuries to figure out us, but I'm thinking we start with breakfast, then maybe sleep for a week. Alara laughed, the sound surprised out of her. That's your grand plan? The Alpha King's strategy for reshaping reality? Sometimes the best strategy is surviving to tomorrow. His lips brushed hers, gentle and reverent. And tomorrow, and every tomorrow after that. With you. Outside, the sun continued its rise, illuminating a world forever changed. Two species no longer separated by fear. A girl who'd found her truth. A king who'd found his heart. And between them, a bond that had rewritten fate itself.